Peace, family. My name is Angela N. Carroll. I am a curator, writer, and the new programmer for the Black Film Supremacy Film Festival. I'm so excited to be in conversation with you all about the Defining Femme short film block, which we are covering today. We will start off with a beautiful conversation with director Xenia Matthews, who is the director of the short film A Few Things I'm Beginning to Understand.
Hi, my name is Xenia. I am a film and visual artist now based in Texas, just coming from Philadelphia. And a lot of my work focuses on the sense of self and the body, especially Black femme bodies. And I'm currently working on an installation right now.
Beautiful. We will also be in conversation with Kenney, representing the short film Woman.
Hi, I am a filmmaker and photographer here in Baltimore, Maryland. And right now I'm just in a space of defining womanhood, what that means, what it feels like, and then how do we kind of transition to the next phase of womanhood.
And last but not least, we will be in conversation with Shashana Rogers, director of the short film Sacred Palms.
Hey y'all, my name is Shashana Rogers. I'm 20 years old from West Baltimore, Maryland. And as an artist, I just want to tell the stories, the many truths and stories of Black women and Black people.
Excellent. So we'll go ahead and jump right in. Each of you have made really beautiful films that celebrate femme identifying folks, that celebrate Black women and Black women's lived experiences in ways that were really moving. You know, I really enjoyed watching your films, experiencing your films. And I feel like I sat with your films because they're fairly short. And I watched them several times, you know, over and over and over again, and was really thinking about the places in my body and in my spirit. I felt the films as I was watching them. And we'll start with you, Xenia. Your film, A Few Things I'm Beginning to Understand, brought up a lot of stuff for me around relationships, right? The love languages that we use or don't use, the ways that we communicate to our partners or don't, the conversations and dialogues that we have with ourselves or with our sisters or with our mothers about our particular loved ones or significant others or partnerships. Can you talk a little bit about what inspired your film?
So what sort of made me want to make this film was like the problems I was having in my relationship. And I was trying to sort of like do that work and like trace it to the root of what was happening. And one of the things that had happened right before the pandemic in December 2019 was my boyfriend, he got arrested in the park, basically for dancing. He like pulled up to the park and he was dancing, he was chilling with his friends, and like the cops started harassing him, trying to take his bike. And yeah, he basically ended up in jail for like a day and a half, like unlawfully detained. And I feel like from there, like just our relationship, it just put such a strain on us as a unit. And maybe about 6 or 7 months later, I started like really feeling that weight. And I just wanted to explore like everything that had happened from that point on and everything that had contributed to like how heavy it felt in my heart. You're muted.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and I want to dig into the marrow of that as well. You know, the ways that we sort of think about or deal with trauma or aren't allowed, right? The privilege of being able to deal with our traumas, how we're expected to just sort of consistently keep moving, keep being productive, right? Keep being laboring bodies, right? For this machine, and how unsustainable that is. And I think a lot of your film is sort of talking about the stress and the strain, the psychological strain that puts on your partner. And then in many ways, his inability to articulate that to you. And then the strain that's placed on you to be what feels like to me, or what I kind of was triggered by, was the strong Black woman trope, right? Of taking care not just of yourself, but also of your partner, and trying to find solutions to this deeper issue. Asia, I feel like a lot of the relationships that you unpack, particularly like mother-daughter dynamics in your film, Woman, feels very similar. It's the traumas that we don't really discuss in our relationships with our mothers, the intergenerational and cellular stuff that we inherit that's very rarely sort of discussed. Can you talk about what inspired your film?
Yeah, so not only do we not discuss them, I don't know if we're always allowed to discuss them. And I think really that's where this film was born. I would just kind of like sit in my kitchen, and like I would have these big parties at my house and sit in the kitchen. And when everybody went home, I would be left with a group of women who just like all of the trauma, all of the heartache, all of the heartbreak. It's 3 o'clock in the morning and we're having these really heavy, deep conversations. And me realizing that I didn't have I didn't have the answer for any of those questions or for anything, but I did need to put it to light. I think a lot of women, we feel like we're kind of in this vastness alone. We're in this space by ourselves. I'm the only one with this particular, generational issue. But the truth is, a lot of us deal with the same thing day in and day out. And just because we don't talk about it, or we're not really allowed, we be put on a strong face, and like that's what we do. We put on a strong face, we go to work, we do the things we have to do. And so it was a great moment for me to be vulnerable with myself, and to see other women kind of be vulnerable in that space too, and how we can connect in those spaces. You're muted.
It's like 20 years of being on Zoom, right? Like for the last, like what feels like a millennium in and of itself, which has only been like a year and a half. And still it's like, unclick this. I want to bring Shashana into the conversation, because I think your film really beautifully discusses the sacredness of our relationships and of Black women, and the ways in which that strength iterates itself in our sustainability, iterates itself in small nuanced ways. And it really feels like a love song to our strength, but also just, to our hands, to our palms, to the work and the labor that Black women do to make sure that we are safe. And it looks like we have lost Shashana. And I think that she will return to the conversation a little bit later. So I want to jump back to you, Xenia. And can you talk a little bit about your process and practice? I thought it was really cool to see you unpacking a lot of this really intense, these really intense issues, right? Like what it means to be a body that is always under attack, right? Like what it means to never really feel safe in your body or in your environment, and how we deal with those traumas. But the way that you unpacked it was like a conversation with yourself. And so it felt very much like a visualization of your internal dialogue, right? And so can you talk about the writing or the crafting of this story, and how it articulated, or why you chose to articulate it in that way, that sort of meta split consciousness, as it were, between yourself and this alternate personality?
Yeah, I've heard like Pearl, like this other character, this other version of myself, like be described as like multiple different things. Like I've heard like a maternal figure, I've heard like a higher power, but it really just comes from me, like always as a kid, I'd always be talking to myself. I was always like that lonely kid, like going off in the park and having like my own adventures in my head. And I think you described it really well. It is like a really good representation of like what the inside of my mind looks like and like how it works. Like I love a lot of like bright colors and sparkly things and just like really fun visuals. But at the same time, there's a lot of very like uncomfortable conversations like going on in there. So I just wanted to mix those two things. And the way this film came together is I feel like it was not something that could have happened in a short period of time. This was like a good like year and a half, 2-year process of me just filming things and editing things and just having to put the pieces together. Like I didn't write anything even resembling what the end product is to begin with. Like I really just made it really came together through the making process. So just a lot of shooting and editing and crying and just going back and forth until I could like finally like distill it down to like a coherent thought, which is often how like things actually happen in our heads in real life. So yeah, I just wanted to process these things, and art is just a great way to process stuff, even if it takes long and it's kind of hard and there's a lot of breakdowns. But yeah, that's sort of how it came together. And I made it during my last year of school, which was also like another added level of stress. But yeah, I'm glad I made it and I stand by it.
Yeah. And so you said that it took a kind of long time to unpack into, because I can imagine, I mean, typically in a kind of, even with a scripted film, it can take years, for you to get what you need. And then with the more kind of intuitive process that it seems like you're engaging, where you're shooting stuff, you're maybe editing, you're leaving a lot of out, you're capturing more as you need it. It really is a more cathartic process for you, right? How did you actually complete it within that year, or was it several years, like most of your undergraduate career, that it took to complete the film?
So I had made a sort of documentary, like a little bit more traditional documentary, not much because I don't know, that's just not how my my style manifests. But I made it for a doc class, and it was also about my relationship with Kier, the person who's in the film. And I had made something about that. I played it for my critiques, and like my professors just like annihilated it. They were like, I don't get it. Is he your brother? What's your relationship? Which is, I don't even like want to go into that. But like that is like when I started thinking about like how to like talk about these topics in a more coherent way. And I had started thinking about it like a long time before my senior year, but I like really like sat down and really started making it like that year, and I completed it within whatever those 2 semesters.
Yeah. And, I think any person of color who has gone through any sort of undergraduate or graduate program can speak to, particularly folks who are creatives or in the arts, can speak to the violence of crits, right? But also can speak to the violence of like academic experiences, period, right? That summarily, and I think that's just really K through undergrad or graduate, the ways in which institutional knowledge erases us, right? Or attempts to erase us in our experiences. So yeah, all of us have experienced that, and kudos to you for surviving, and also for, pushing through with the creation of the film in spite of those critiques, because, the reality is they didn't get it because they didn't try to get it, right? Which is another reason why these films are so important, and so jumping back to you, Asia, so much of what I appreciated about your film is it reminds me a lot of Carrie Mae Weem's Kitchen Table series, and just the intimacy of it, right? And also Micheline Thomas, like we're in these kind of static, very, very stylized shots where we are seeing women in these intimate spaces, having these really beautiful conversations with themselves, but also to each other. And so can you talk a little bit about the aesthetic choices that you employ and your process and practice in creating this work?
Of course. So I think in my mind, I saw it a very particular way. And so when I began to write it, it did not manifest itself in like this, like a traditional storyline. That's just not how it came out. It came out as, and I want to say like, it reminds me of a play a lot, and just like these very like singular spaces and stories. And then the characters don't follow through until the end. Like you meet these people and their stories, and then that's it. And then, they kind of like go off into their own space. And so I think I just wanted it to come across how it was in my head. I think because in my head, that was the space I lived in. That was the space, like I held a special place for these Black women in my head. And I wrote from their perspective, and I cried from their perspective. And like I did all this healing work from their perspective. And so I thought it was only fair that I then show it in that perspective. And similar to you, I think I showed it to people early on, like in the early stages. And there were some people who just did not understand like the choice of aesthetic, the writing. They just didn't get it. And I think the cinematographer I worked with, he said, Asia, the people who are meant to get it will get it. And that's all you have to worry about. Like, don't change the storyline for that purpose. Just, like if they're meant to get it, if it's for them, they will get it and they will hear it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And sticking with you a little bit, can you talk like how long was your process from concept to script to shooting and editing for it to get?
Okay, so I think I started writing this in 2016, and then there was a break in the writing period because I realized I'm writing this, this beautiful piece about Black women and our mothers. And then my own relationship with my mother was not yet healed or had not gone through these things I wanted my characters to go through. And so I had to take a break from it and then work on that relationship and then come back to it. So it took about 4 or 5 years for completion. But I think I started in a very particular headspace, and I started in a space of like, our mothers don't understand us. Like this turmoil, this very like young turmoil. And I ended in a space of, this was a love letter to my mother, really, ultimately. And I wanted her to see herself as a woman and not just my mother. And I also wanted to see her as a woman and not just my mother. And so I think it ended in a very, very different place than where it even began.
Yeah. And I appreciated that because I feel like there's often a kind of pressure to, and I was just having a conversation with a friend about this the other day, like, that Black artists, regardless of the medium that we're working in, feel a kind of compulsion and pressure to create this epically reverent and positive, right? This very particular kind of representation of positive aspects of Black life in response to just, centuries or decades or hundreds of years for sure of manipulation of our image, right? Of propaganda that articulates Black bodies and Black experiences as anything and everything except for human, right? And so I appreciated that you did not shy away from the tension that is present in a lot of our relationships with our mothers or the energies that have raised us. And speaking also to what you said, largely because we are seeing them as our mothers, right? This epic, all-encompassing title, and not sort of dealing with the specificity of not only are you a woman, right? Like just a human and a woman, but you are a Black woman, right? Or women of color, right? In a world...
On top of everything else you deal with.
On top of it all,
Right.
In a country that is proven time and time again to despise Black women, right? To not value or care about Black women, to bust into the homes of Black women and shoot us as we sleep, right? And so there's something to be said about you being honest and earnest and sharing, that aspect of yourself on the screen and of your own sort of relationship. And as a result, and by extension, all of us can sort of allow ourselves to breathe in that and think about and be honest and earnest with ourselves about the need to heal those relationships, which is really powerful and very, very important work to be done. Did you struggle with that as you were writing the piece?
Yes, every day. Like every day I would write a little bit and then cry a little bit and then write a little bit, and not to mention, once you start digging into your relationship with, the maternal figure that has raised you in any way, I'm sure you both know, you start to uncover all sorts of emotions with your relationships, working relationships, partnerships, like all of these things, friendships start to just get like dug up out of nowhere. Like, where did this come from? And so I would just find myself, in a space with my partner. It's like, I can't even be close to you right now because I'm writing this like very heavy space about my relationship with my mother and realizing that like, I don't even know what that relationship is. And so how can I possibly, really know anything else?
Yeah, it's a real thing. Can we and this is a question I think to both of you. Film is a very expensive medium. And we know that typically when we're thinking about, films that don't, or projects that don't fit the particular sort of Hollywood structure, right? And particularly in relation to Black narratives, they're situated as comedies, or trauma stories, right? And there hasn't been a lot of support for more experimental or avant-garde or nonlinear approaches to cinema created by and about Black subjects. And so can both of you speak to how you supported the making of this film? Did you get support from community? Did you do crowdfunding? Did you receive grants? Yeah.
So for me, it was like mostly GoFundMe, and let me see. Yeah, it was mostly GoFundMe. I actually had to get a new laptop because my MacBook Air was not cutting it. But yeah, it was mostly that. I had to like get my own equipment because I moved away from school and I had to like fund all of that. What else? I can say that like the actual like support around me, like emotional, moral, whatever, that kind of support was kind of non-existent. Like, yeah, there was like my thesis teacher who was like helping me get through it and everything like that, but like for the most part, I felt like pretty alone making this film. And like that's why I'm so glad I got into this festival. It's my first festival, and I'm I'm like so happy that this is the space that I'm entering into like the festival world with, because like I feel the understanding and I feel like all of those things that I didn't get while I was making the film. And it's like a sigh of relief, like finally. But financially, yeah, GoFundMe, basically.
All of it came out of my pocket. So there was like no GoFundMe, no any of that. I will say though, I did have a great community support when I started to write this. And I think like from the cinematographer to like the production to everything, people really just kind of, I think, rallied around me in a space and wanted me to make this. And I think for a long time I was very hesitant, like I'll write it, but I'm not going to put it out, or I'll shoot it, but then I'm not going to put it out. And so I think people really wanted me, like, the ones that love me, to put this out. And so I was blessed in that space. And then like you, like these are my first kind of film festivals. And so I'm so excited for, people to see it and kind of get that level, I think, of recognition now. Is different from, your community kind of celebrating you and wanting you to put it out. It's different to be among other filmmakers and other people who kind of understand the vision. It's completely different.
Beautiful. Yeah. Well, we're so honored to have, both of your films. And I saw them, I was like, oh, gorgeous. Yes. Please. Yes, please. So yeah, thank you for, just thank you for being present, and thank you for sharing, your creations with the world. All right, let's talk about the real shit now of weapons of choice, right? What are you all shooting with? How big was your crew? Are you working with sort of small crews where you are all the things? You are the DP, you're the director, you're the writer. yeah, this is for both of you. What's your camera choice? Are you shooting digital or film?
So I definitely shot digital. Griffin, I don't know if you're familiar with him, who does amazing work, shot my film. I know, so like it's amazing, and I laughed with him a lot. And I told him he put me through like the ultimate masterclass. And so this was like my first time like directing, writing, kind of in that space. And he would get me on set and he would say, okay, Asia, like you have to figure out what you're doing. Like you have to figure out what it is you want to do, like what story you want to tell. And then we would go back and edit it. He was like, that's not right. You have to go back out there. You have to, write it again. You have to. And so he really took me to like the most like epic masterclass. And I'm, so grateful for that. But yeah, he did, it was all on film. And then I directed and wrote. And I think, from that experience, I came out like I feel like I have so many tools now in my tool belt, from that very intense experience. But a small crew, very small crew.
For me, it was basically me. Like I had moved away from school. Like anybody that could crew for me was not within 1,000 miles of me. So like, and it was the pandemic. So everyone's like, how do we shoot? What do we do? What's the protocol? And I know a lot of my classmates like raised money for testing, but that would have like put my budget like so much higher. So I shot it. Other than the game show scene, I shot everything. And I was like shooting myself without my glasses. I couldn't see. It was like a struggle. But cameras, my favorite camera is the Canon C100, and that's like I feel most comfortable like shooting on that camera. But I had to get a camera for myself, so a lot of it is shot on the GH4, the Lumix GH4. And yeah, usually I do shoot my own stuff, but it's like I'm shooting myself. It's weird. It's a lot. It's mostly the tripod. Shout out to the tripod. And like the crew was like basically me, and then my brothers acted in my game show scene. So yeah, it's a one-woman show over here. I wish I had a crew.
Yeah, I mean, it's shout out to brother Kirby Griffin. He has worked on a lot of my films as well, and is doing a lot to just elevate Black film in Baltimore and beyond. So shout out to the brother. We love and appreciate you. Let's talk a little bit about inspiration, not just for the film, but for the concepts that are informing the film, the subjects that are situated within your films. What were you reading or thinking through, as you were creating this work? What are you watching? And were there any sort of major filmmakers or musicians or writers who you were sort of listening to on repeat or watching over again or reading over and over again to help you ground yourself in this work?
I know a filmmaker that really inspired me while I was in school is Marlon Riggs, and his his sort of reflexive and very performative way of telling his own story. And I really drew a lot of inspiration from that. And something that I read during an art history class, and I was so thankful for my art history teacher including it, was this paper called Venus Noire. Black Women in the French Imaginary, I believe is the subtitle. But it's basically about how Black women's bodies were used for entertainment and sort of like a circus of just to be gawked at. And that really made me want to center myself in the narrative rather than him, because up until that point, I really was centering like his story, like the violence against the Black male body. And like, why am I doing that when there's so much of my own experience that's being like dampened here? And yeah, that one paper really inspired me, along with a lot of the other papers that we read about the Haitian Revolution and how these different forms of colonization like really manifested onto Black women's bodies. And like, it was just like a sort of like perfect storm of violence, of exploitation, of all of these things. So that's what made me want to center myself.
So I remember being in a space where I was reading a lot of James Baldwin. Like any book I could get my hands on, I was reading. And then I remember I saw If Beale Street Could Talk. So I'd read the book and then I saw the movie, and it was a completely different experience for me. And there's one scene in particular in that movie. She's like in the bathtub and she's giving birth and her mother is behind her. And I remember that moment thinking like, what a beautiful moment, not just, because it's beautiful, because she's giving birth, but also like our mothers really have us, through and through, like they have us. And this thought kind of came to me that Black mothers teach us strength, definitely. And I don't know if they teach us love so much. Like, I think strength is the forefront of what we're taught, and love is kind of secondary, like love will come. And so that thought really prompted all of these other, inspirations and things, and the way that I work. Like that singular thought really is how I work on anything I work on. And then I don't know if you all are familiar with her. I listen to a lot of Abraham Hicks. And she talks a lot about like we're in this like vortex of space, and kind of you can transform your space with thought, with mind, with action. You can kind of transform your space. And I think a lot about, if I can do that with myself, like I can possibly do it with other people, or I can transform the spaces that they live in my mind into new spaces that they can live in my mind. And so that, kind of manifests itself in my work a little bit, just in how I'm thinking of this one singular thing in one way, and I can transform that person into something else. And like, how can I do that? And what ways can I do that? So that's really like what's been inspiring me right now. But I don't know how you all, work, but I know that when I'm in like the process of work, it's so hard for me to like read anything else, to watch anything else, to see, like, I really have to like cut off the outside world completely and then just focus in on like what I am doing.
Yeah, I completely understand that. I think there's this period of consumption, inspiration, and then it's like blackout. Where I like literally bought like a sensory deprivation tent, which is like made for kids, which I thought was very strange, but I think it's to teach them how to center themselves. I don't know. I was like, this is weird. I don't know if I would put my kid in well, I probably would, like in a dark room, like, all right, we're going to meditate. We're going to go in. You're going to learn how to astral travel in this moment. But yeah, like, and then you have to like just tune in and center in and cut out all the noise, filter what's yours and filter what's other stuff. So the clarity of both of your visions in these films is strong, and the aesthetic is really, and I say moving. I said moving a few times when I'm talking about your films, but they really are like I watched them and felt all the feels, So thank you for doing that work. Last question. Just wanted to give you guys a chance to plug any next projects or thoughts about new film works that you might be working on that you're in a position to be able to share some information about.
So I've been writing a lot. So I'm really in like a space of quietness right now. I've been writing a lot. I'm traveling very soon to kind of work on something else. And I'm excited about it. Just, I don't know, just like digging deep into this kind of journey of womanhood, and me knowing that like, it's going to be a lifelong journey. Like, where is it right now? And where is it going to take me? So yeah, I hope it'll be out, in due time. So, yeah, I'm excited about it.
I'm right now, I'm in the process of applying for grants for my, this is my first installation. I wanted to do it in school, but like just with the pandemic, obviously in-person shows aren't possible. But I'm working on an installation. It's very much about the body, and I want the space to be like the inside of the body, like you watch it from the inside of the body and the characters exist inside the body. So I'm still in development for it, but basically it's just centering around the different kinds of self. So like your physical body, like what people perceive you as, your, I guess, like soul, like your intangible body, your mechanical body, the thing that like keeps you alive, and like all those things like represented through these like sort of like motherly figures. Like everything, Asia, that you said about motherhood is like really inspiring me. But yeah, that's sort of what I have right now, but I'm still in like the grant application process, a little bit of development, going into pre-production soon. So yeah.
So we want to take a moment to just acknowledge amazing director Shashana Rogers, who's been struggling but has kept the faith and kept pushing with some tech issues. And we were thinking, if for some reason, because I know we're at some time constraints, we can't continue the conversation now. We'll definitely schedule a part 2 to be in conversation with you and do a deeper dive into your beautiful film, Sacred Poems. But if you wouldn't mind just sharing your inspirations for the film.
Okay. First, I want to say I'm so sorry. Thank you guys for just doing what y'all do. I don't know what was going on, but my inspiration for Sacred Poems, basically, I'm a part of an organization called New Generation Scholars, which is founded by Sharena Ashanti Christmas, the legendary Sharena Ashanti Christmas. And the organization, basically, it just educates Black youth on the African diaspora. It creates artists. It basically trains us and teaches us how to be radical in our skin, radical about our Blackness. And we had went to South Carolina to study the Gullah Geechee people recently in June. And while we was down there, one of the things that I kept focusing on was our hands. Like when you learn so much about our history, like Black people, we built everything. Like in South Carolina, it was so interesting that the architecture, everything from the past is still up. Like a lot of their stuff from like slavery is still up. The buildings, the gates. Like I remember it was one house. It was like this gate with spikes on it. And I'm like, why is the spikes on the gate? And the guy was like, oh, that's from slavery to keep like the enslaved people from getting in the white people houses and things like that. And I'm like, wow, that's so crazy. Because in Baltimore City, we know the history, but it's not in our face. We don't walk around and we see houses or prisons from slavery time like on the corner. Like we just learn about it. So down there, I'm like, wow, like our hands is everywhere. Or even in the I think we had went to the Avery Center. They had bricks, like it was brick wall, but it was fingerprints in the bricks. It was fingerprints in the bricks to where as though you could see the people who built the wall. And I'm like, this is insane. Like I don't see these things, and it was definitely a different feeling because it's like, wow, it's so beautiful. But then once you learn a history and you learn how something was built, or you learn what certain architecture mean, it's like, can I really call this beautiful when I know the pain? I feel the pain by me just looking at a wall. So Sacred Poems, I really wanted to emphasize just the idea and the essence of Black hands and how it was everywhere and how we did everything. We built everything. Our pain is in everything that we look at. So if that makes sense, that's the inspiration from it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And at the end, I've just gotten a note that we have a few more 4 minutes. So if I can stick with you for a minute, Shashana, because I have so many questions to ask you about your beautiful film. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about, and also shout out to Revolutionary Sharena Christmas, who does so much to empower Black youth in Baltimore and beyond. Just much love to that sister and comrade. Can you speak a little bit, Shashana, to your collaborations? Because I think what was most, what sort of synced your beautiful cinematography in with the images that you were uncovering was the narrative, the poem by Nia June. And but I also, from what I understand, you had other collaborations with the creation of this film that allowed for it to happen. So can you talk about, first and foremost, the importance of having a spoken word artist sort of narrate this project? Did she see the footage and then create the poem, or create the poem and then you rendered the footage around it?
So basically, it was so crazy how she made it. Miss Nia June, one of my poetry mentors. I love her to death. Basically, I had created the film. I had edited it. Before I had put like the effects on it, it was just all the regular pieces, all the footages put together. And I was like, can you like create a spoken word piece for this? And she was like, okay. And when we got back from South Carolina, we only had a week to create every ending project for our ending exhibition. So I'm like, I don't know. Like, I was a little nervous at first because I did kind of ask her last minute, but she had did it in a day. Like, Miss Nia is a beast. She wrote it in a day. It didn't take her long, probably like 2-3 hours. And then I had put it over top of the footage and then I edited it. But I think her piece, definitely, it's important to have the right person kind of, I guess, carry the story. I feel like her poem definitely carried it out. Of course, you got the visual aspects, but to have words to piece it all together, you have, I think, what am I trying to say? Like, her poem definitely, I guess, sealed the visual aspects. I think words and visuals, her poem is like a visual itself, if that makes sense. Poetry, I feel like when you have the right person to tell a poem, it's almost like you can't see everything they saying. And I think Miss Nia, she definitely is a blessed poet like that, whereas though anything she says, you can feel, you can see. So I think that was important to have on there. Other collaborations that I used were just my peers. I think that's really important, is to use your community. You have a community for a reason, and that was something that Miss Christmas definitely emphasized. All of my mentors in NGS definitely emphasized was that as Black people, we have to use each other. And I was just like, okay, like, if I got to use everybody, let me use what I do have. Sometimes you might not have everything that you envision, but you got to make do with what you do have. So I have a group of people. I have these amazing artist mentors. Like, let's make something happen with the things that I have access to.
Awesome. And can you speak a little bit about your weapons of choice? Like, what did you shoot this with?
Yes. Okay. So I shot this with a Canon T6, and I believe I used a wide lens, and then I edited with VN, which is a phone app. I'm just learning how to like edit like on a laptop and use Premiere and Pro. Premiere is a beast. I'm just learning how to do that. But that was actually my last film that I did. Like, I edited on my phone. So VN, and then I used Prequel for like the presets and everything like that. So
Beautiful. And did you have a filter on the actual lens, or did you do the filter in post-production?
Post-production.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a beautiful effect, and it feels warm, and it feels. I was like, man, like I feel like I want to just, like hold. My grandmother has transitioned now, but it made me want to it made me remember her hands and her feet. It made me remember like looking at her hands and seeing the veins and seeing the age and thinking like, wow, like you've done so much for us, I'm kidding. You've done so much for us, right? Our mothers have done so much for us. Our labor, the labor of our bodies and of our Gungun, our ancestors, is literally in the land, in the soil. Our blood is in this land, so I think the piece that you created is a beautiful homage to us all, and to all of our ancestors, all of those who precede us, who have fought for our liberation and fought for our survival.
Thank you.
Can you share next projects or other projects that you're working on that you're excited about?
Next projects, I would say I just got finished. Well, I'm currently editing this one film that I also did down there in South Carolina with one of my peers, Naima. I don't know when she will put that out, but I love it. I love it. I actually use Strange Fruit by Billie Holiday for the music. So that's what I'm kind of finishing up right now. I just did this other film for my class, my summer class I took at Baltimore Youth Film Arts, titled Feed the Seed, Witness the Blossom. And the plot of that, I really feel like for the Feed the Seed, Witness the Blossom, I kind of wanted to pull from something that I didn't really see often. So the plot is, you have this boy, this child. he's walking around his neighborhood talking to himself, and everybody's like, what is he doing? Like, you talking to yourself, walking around, you crazy. But he's actually talking to his son. I wanted to emphasize the essence of when you feed and nurture Black kids while they're young, you get to witness this beautiful blossom as they age. So he's talking to the son, because the son is like this thing that feeds him. The son, he listens to him. The son don't interrupt him. He's always there for him all the time. And then I split the film into 4 sections. So the first section is the feeding, which is when he's just walking around talking. The second section is the pass down, because when you get to experience certain things, you're able to pass them down to the next generation. So he's talking to his like baby brother, telling him like, you should talk to the son, trying to teach him how to do it himself. The third section is the search, because it's like he craved the son so much that even at nighttime, he's looking for it. He like, where you at? I'm calling you. Like, I need that love. I need the attention. Then the fourth section is internal blossom, which is just the overall thing. Like, you get to witness him walking down the street with his brother when the film started with him walking by himself. So that's something else I just completed. I might put that out. I don't know. I got to decide, but I finished it. So I really just want to, and I wanted to do something that, I don't know, like we see a lot of common stories about Baltimore, like Baltimore kids and things like that. I didn't want to do something that I usually see, and I didn't want to tell a story that I always hear or anything like that. So I think as an artist right now, I really am in a state of learning and pushing myself. Like, I don't want to be mediocre. That's something Miss Christmas always tells us, like mediocrity is not acceptable. So I definitely don't want to be a mediocre artist.
Well, you are far from mediocre, young sister, and we are very proud of you, and very proud of everyone that's on this panel who is continuing to do this work. As we close out, can you please let folks know how to stay in touch with you all? Quick social media handles, and then we will close out our conversation.
You can follow me on Instagram at Shigo, which is SH, 2 E's, 2 G's, and 1 O.
You can follow me on Instagram at Museum. That's MUXUEE. Wait, should I spell it wrong? Okay, wait, let me write it down. Someone go. Okay. It's MUXEEUM. It has like my name in it. See, XEE. Okay, yeah, that's my Instagram, and then my website is the same, MUXEEUM.com.
You can find me on Instagram. It is my name with an L in the middle, so it's Asia L Kenney. It is ASIALKENNEY.
Beautiful. And you can follow me on Instagram, Angela_N_Carroll. Again, thank you so much, sister comrades, for being in conversation with me. Thank you for doing the work that you continue to do. And we are so excited to view your films and include your films in this year's festival. For those that are still tuning in with us, please make sure to check out the other films that are on our lineup. We have a lot of really beautiful selections for you this year that are still speaking to all of the climate issues that need to shift in order to secure Black lives. Check us out at BFSFilmfest.com. Again, that's BFSFilmfest.com. Thank you. Be safe. Be well.